Just for one weekend, he said. Absolutely not, I replied. I'll pay you. Still no. My grandmother thinks I'm married. I stared at him across the coffee shop table. What? He sighed dramatically and rubbed his forehead. My grandmother is turning 80 this weekend. She lives in a small village. For 3 years I've been telling her I have a wife because she wouldn't stop trying to set me up. I nearly choked on my coffee. And now she wants to meet her. I laughed so hard people turned to look at us. He didn't, because unfortunately he was serious. That was how I found myself sitting beside Ethan Carter 2 days later, driving toward a village where dozens of people believed I was his loving wife. At the time, I thought it was the worst decision I'd ever made. I had no idea it would become the best. The moment we arrived, disaster struck. His grandmother was waiting outside. The sweet old woman rushed toward us with tears in her eyes. My beautiful granddaughter-in-law. Before I could react, she pulled me into a hug. Then she turned to Ethan. And you, she smacked him on the arm. You finally brought her. Ethan grinned. Sorry, Grandma. I expected the interrogation to begin immediately. Instead, she held both our hands and led us inside. The house was packed with relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, children. Everyone wanted to meet me. Everyone believed I was Ethan's wife. And everyone had questions. How did you meet? When did you get married? Who proposed first? I smiled so much my cheeks hurt. Meanwhile, Ethan answered every question with ridiculous confidence. Our first date lasted 6 hours. She fell in love with me immediately. I kicked him under the table. He yelped. The family laughed. And somehow, instead of feeling awkward, I found myself enjoying it. That evening, another problem appeared. The next morning brought a new challenge. Family photos. Lots of family photos. The photographer arranged everyone in the garden. Then he pointed at Ethan. Put your arm around your wife. My heart skipped. Ethan hesitated for a second. Then his arm settled gently around my waist. Warm, comforting, dangerously comfortable. The camera clicked, and for some reason neither of us moved away afterward. The day continued with games, laughter, and endless conversations. Everywhere we went, people treated us like a couple, and little by little, pretending became easier. Too easy. At lunch, Ethan automatically pulled out a chair for me. At dinner, he remembered exactly how I liked my tea. When I got cold during the evening celebration, he quietly placed his jacket around my shoulders. No audience, no relatives watching, no reason to pretend. Yet he did it anyway. I looked up. Thanks. His smile softened. You're welcome. Something fluttered inside my chest. Something dangerous. That night there was a village festival. Lights decorated every street. Music filled the air. Families wandered through colorful stalls. It looked like something from a movie. Ethan and I walked together through the crowd. At one stall, an old woman sold handmade bracelets. She smiled when she saw us. You two are newlyweds, aren't you? I opened my mouth, but Ethan answered first. We've been married 3 years. The woman nodded, still looking at each other like that. Both of us froze. Like what? I asked. She chuckled. Like you're each other's favorite person. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then we quickly thanked her and walked away. But the words stayed with me, because part of me wondered, was she right? Later that evening, we reached the festival's dance area. Couples danced beneath glowing lights. I expected Ethan to keep walking. Instead, he stopped, then held out his hand. Dance with me. I laughed nervously. I don't dance. Neither do I. Then why? His eyes met mine. Because everyone else is. I knew exactly what he meant. Pretending. Just pretending. So I took his hand. The music slowed. His hand settled at my waist. Mine rested on his shoulder. And suddenly the rest of the world seemed to disappear. There were hundreds of people around us. Yet all I noticed was him. The warmth of his hand. The softness in his eyes. The smile that appeared whenever I looked away shyly. For the first time since arriving, I forgot we were acting. And judging by the way he looked at me, so did he. After the dance, we walked back toward the house. The village streets were quiet. Moonlight painted everything silver. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Then Ethan broke the silence. Can I tell you something? Sure. I don't want this weekend to end. My heart skipped. I looked at him. He wasn't smiling. For once he looked completely serious. Why? His gaze stayed on the road. Because I've had more fun with you in 3 days than I've had in years. The butterflies in my stomach became impossible to ignore. I looked away before he could see my smile. Me too. The next day was Grandma's birthday party, the biggest event of the weekend. Everyone gathered in the garden. There was food, music, games, and enough decorations to cover an entire town. Everything was perfect, until Grandma made a speech. She stood before everyone, smiling warmly. Then she pointed toward us. "I have one wish." My stomach dropped. Never trust old ladies with microphones. Grandma grinned. "I want great-grandchildren." The crowd erupted with cheers. I nearly fell out of my chair. Ethan turned bright red. For the next 10 minutes, neither of us could look anyone in the eye. That evening, after the party ended, we sat together on the porch. The celebration lights still glowed in the distance. Crickets sang in the darkness. Tomorrow we'd leave. Tomorrow the pretending would end. Neither of us seemed happy about it. "I should probably thank you," Ethan said quietly. "For what?" "For saving me." I smiled. "From your grandmother?" He laughed. "Exactly." Silence settled again. Comfortable silence. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and suddenly my heart started racing. "There's something I need to tell you." My breath caught. "What?" He hesitated. For the first time all weekend, Ethan Carter looked nervous. I stopped pretending. The world seemed to pause. "What do you mean?" His voice softened. "I mean somewhere between the midnight cookies, the festival dance, and watching you make my grandmother laugh." He took a deep breath. "I fell in love with you." My heart nearly stopped. For a second I couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. All I could do was stare at him. He gave a small nervous laugh. "You don't have to say anything." I finally found my voice. "That's good." His smile disappeared slightly. "Oh, because I need to tell you something too." Hope returned to his eyes. "What?" I smiled, the biggest smile I'd worn all weekend. I stopped pretending first. For a moment he simply stared. Then he laughed, the happiest laugh I'd ever heard. And before I could say another word, he pulled me into his arms. The hug felt warm, safe, like coming home. The next morning we prepared to leave. Grandma stood outside waving goodbye. Then she winked at us. A very suspicious wink. I narrowed my eyes. "You knew, didn't you?" The old woman laughed. "Knew what?" "That we weren't married." She smiled proudly. "My dear." I raised Ethan. Ethan groaned. "Grandma." She ignored him. I knew within 5 minutes. My jaw dropped. "Then why didn't you say anything?" She patted my hand. "Because I also knew you'd fall in love." Ethan covered his face. I burst out laughing. The old woman was impossible. As we drove away from the village, I looked out the window. The weekend was over. The pretending was over. But somehow the story wasn't ending. It was only beginning. Ethan reached across the center console and took my hand. No audience. No family. No reason to act. Just us. I smiled and intertwined my fingers with his. "So?" I asked. "Yes? What happens now?" He brought my hand to his lips and kissed it gently. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that made my heart melt every single time. "Now," he said, "I get to stop pretending and start loving my future wife for real." And for the first time in my life, I couldn't wait to see what happened next.